to all of you and welcome to this fourth event of the European Biotech Week 2020 here in Brussels, hosted by two European associations, BioDeutschland, Biotechnology Industry Organisation, and Europa Bio, European Association of Bioindustries. I'm Bernard Grimm, the Healthcare Biotechnology Director at Europa Bio, and I will be moderating this session. This event takes place during the European Biotech Week, celebrating biotechnology, an innovative sector accelerated by the discovery of the helix of life, the DNA, in 1953. The first European Biotech Week took place in 2013, marking the 60th anniversary of the discovery of DNA. And despite the COVID-19 situation, we have this week 100 events taking place in 16 different countries. As you know, the COVID-19 outbreak has served as a stress test for the European healthcare system, and it's still as we speak. It has also exposed the underlying weaknesses of the EU and the member states' ability to respond to cross-border healthcare threats. The virus knows no border, and fragmented response strategy led by definition to varying results, thus highlighting the need for increased cooperation in the future. Since the severity of the outbreak became evident, so did the importance of the biotechnology sector. Public officials, regulators, and citizens look to biotechnology companies to provide solutions. The biotech industry has responded with unprecedented speed to the emerging health threats, spearheading the race to find a vaccine or an antiviral treatment or even diagnostic tools. The pandemic has indeed highlighted the tremendous impact it has had on public health, on our day-to-day life, and on our economies. The COVID-19 environment has triggered a collective reflection on that. All aspects of our collective response and our ability to respond to future health threats will become under stark review. The objective of this session is to provide a platform to discuss lessons learned from the COVID-19 outbreak and what Europe can do to better prepare itself for any future health threat. It will also try to highlight the importance of having a European research ecosystem capable of developing and producing solutions to our healthcare challenges. And finally, it will stress the importance of having a clear strategy for strengthening the life science sector in Europe for the health of citizens, but also to participate to the recovery of the economy. For this discussion, I'm honored to introduce you to our panel speakers. Dr. Peter Liese, MEP, EPP Germany, who I believe has been quite vocal on these topics, representing in several occasions his party. Dr. Liese, happy to have you with us this morning. I'm sure you will make some strong points on how we should prepare and get organized. We have Mrs. Pilar Aguar Fernandez, Head of Unit Health Innovation at DG Research. She will cover what the European Commission and more particularly DG RTD has learned from COVID and what can we do to strengthen and coordinate our research priority. And finally, we have Mr. Sheen Maret, Chief Business Officer and Chief Commercial Officer of BioNTech, a member of BioDeutschland. He will share with us the experience of an innovative company trying to develop a vaccine, what worked well in terms of public support and what could be improved, and certainly the many other opportunities BioNTech has, and given its extensive technology platform, what other type of solution it can bring. You will have the opportunity to ask questions to our panelists after their intervention. You can submit your question either through raising your hands, and then you can ask your questions directly, or through the Q&A button at the lower right side of your screen. And I will make sure your question will be properly relayed.
That's a really boring slide, which we have to put in nowadays because we're a public company. This is our company. We're currently about 1,500 pioneers, young company, average age of about 34 years, from 64 nations in Europe. And we share one vision. And if you go to the next slide, it's really to develop next generation immunotherapies. When I was at university a very long time ago, this was just being written about something really far in the future. Now it's reality, and we are using the immune system for cancer and for infectious disease to build a global European biotech company. We have built the company out. We do GMP manufacturing all in Europe, and to help us really build a global company, we've done a number of collaborations. And if you go to the next slide, please. Here's just some of them. Why are collaborations important to the vaccine? It's because of footprint. We are 1,500 people, but to provide a vaccine globally, you need really strong muscle. And when we set up the company a few years after we set it up, we embarked upon collaborations to give us that muscle. And it's an interim step for us. Long term, we will have that muscle ourselves. But in the meantime, we've developed a number of collaborations. Bill and Melinda Gates have been extremely helpful in the infectious disease environment, right through to what's important in the COVID situation, which is our collaboration with Pfizer globally, and Fosun specifically for China, which is one of the largest Chinese pharmaceutical companies. The rest of the collaborations on the top line are in our cancer arena. We are ostensibly a cancer company. When you develop an immunotherapy, whether you're stimulating the immune system to survey and kill cancer cells, or survey and protect against infection, the underlying mechanisms are very, very similar. And those synergies we've been able to use very, very effectively in the development of our COVID vaccine. So if you go to the next slide, please. I mentioned we're a European company. We've got 12 ongoing clinical studies, all in immunotherapy, 7 locations in Germany. Inevitably, we do have 2 locations on the western east coast of the United States. As a global company, you can never forget being in the United States, as it is the largest pharmaceutical company in the world. And this year, we embarked upon that at the beginning of the year with an acquisition in Cambridge, near Boston, to complement our facility in San Diego. But you see most of our facilities are in Germany. If we go to the next slide. One of the critical elements of a vaccine when you're dealing with a new technology, and we are using a new technology for our vaccine, is manufacturing. And in Europe, again, we have a collaboration really to bring excellence to pharmaceutical manufacturing. It's particularly important for our individualized cancer approach, where if you compare 2 cancer cells on a molecular basis or from 2 different people, they won't be molecularly similar. They'll be different. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. If you look under a microscope, they may look similar, but when you go down to the molecular level, they're not. And so if you really want to treat cancer, you do need to go to the individualized level, we believe. And but that creates all sorts of challenges for manufacturing, because you've got to manufacture for single patients then. And we've been utilizing, actually, Siemens, who have built wonderful just-in-time manufacturing systems, which, of course, is important for cancer, in the car industry in Germany. And we've been working with Siemens to be able to adapt that to just-in-time cancer therapy manufacturing. And that's also been useful for our COVID vaccine. again, that understanding of manufacturing, where we use the same underlying technology, has been instrumental in the speed with which we've been able to get to where we are today, which is we've treated over 30,000 subjects with our vaccine against COVID. So if we go to the next slide, please. I haven't really talked about the technologies. I'm not going to go into this in depth. It's important in that we have experience with dealing with mRNA. We've been treating cancer patients with mRNA encoding actually different antigens, which are the pieces of peptide that you want, or pieces of material that you want to raise the immune system against. And we adapted that very quickly for COVID. mRNA has some very, very interesting properties and is really, in our view, ideal for vaccine development. Most importantly, out of all of this, there are just 3 points. We've got the experience with side effect profile and efficacy in over 400 cancer patients before we embarked upon the COVID, so that was useful for us, and also useful for the regulatory authorities because this is a new technology. All of the manufacturing I just mentioned, very important because it allowed us to scale very rapidly, and mRNA does allow you to do that. And from a immunological perspective, mRNA stimulates both antibody and T-cell responses at low doses. If you look at COVID and if you look at vaccinology, as it's so called, and you look at flu and the vaccines that we're so familiar with, that they are very much focused on antibody titers, which provide protection. And one of the reasons for that, we're so focused on that, is, of course, that they do provide protection, but it's not the full story. We have a whole other part of the immune system, which is the cellular immune system, leading to T-cell responses. And mRNA is extremely good, not only at creating antibody response, but T-cell responses. And so if you can liken it to the virus is in the blood, and you get your antibodies to stop it entering your cells. But what happens when they enter the cells? Because what the virus tries to do is it enters the cell and then takes over the cell and makes it into a virus factory to produce more virus. And that's when the T cells come in, because you want to shut those factories down by killing those factory cells. And that's an extremely important component of protection that, together with the antibodies, makes for, we believe, good efficacy. We will see, of course, in the clinical trials where we're in the end phase, but that is one of the most elegant things of this new technology of mRNA. So if we go to the next slide, these are our partnerships which give us muscle, as I mentioned earlier, to allow us to really drive the use of the distribution and use of the vaccine globally to stop this pandemic. And if you go to the next slide, please. I mentioned all of this background because ultimately this explains this slide. And the SARS-CoV-2 sequence was published in The Lancet on January the 12th. We started a project at the end of January and were in the clinic testing in Germany in April. And that is extremely rapid, and it's because of all of the things I've explained previously, the flexibility of mRNA, the previous experience with mRNA, the factories and the ability to scale up very rapidly. And by April, we'd established the two collaborations on the previous slide. Where we stand today is that because of the flexibility of mRNA, we have 4 vaccine candidates actually in clinical testing, one of which has entered phase 3. And this gives us really the ability to evaluate the full parameters around our approach. It may well be possible that we launch for one product and then bring an even better product to the market later on, and that's what we're looking at the moment with all of these diverse candidates in clinical testing. The goal is to file with the regulatory authorities based upon a 44,000 patient phase 3 study in October. And if you think about starting at the end of January and with that goal of October, end of October, as early as end of October, filing for a registration, and compare that to a typical vaccine development cycle, which is 12 years on average, this is pretty quick. And again, this is because of the things that we were able to build. So that's certainly all of the learnings that we've had and experience we've had over the last 12 years since we've founded the company have really helped us to do this. If you go to the next slide, I won't spend too much time on this. In Europe, I'm very pleased to say that we have agreed with the Commission to supply 200 million doses to the European people with a further option of 100 million. I like to say that that's top of the table, and I put it at the top of the table because it's the biggest supply agreement, and we're very proud of that. Our aim is really to supply next year up to 1.3 billion doses of our program. This is a 2-dose schedule. You receive it once, and then 21 days later it's a booster. We find that works from an immune response point of view really quite well. And if we go to the next slide, in order to assure, again, supply, we've just bought a historic site, which we will close, we hope, this quarter, from Novartis, which has a very special significance. It's the Behring work, and Behring, of course, was a scientist who was instrumental in vaccinology. It's an extremely entrepreneurial site, I have to say. But this will allow us, in addition, to supply in addition up to 750 million doses per year once we get going in Marburg. So again, we're very much looking to provide scale for everyone. And if we go to the next slide, all of this has been supported by what we do in Europe. I have to say the science in Europe is world class. We could spend hours on what we need to do to make us a real superpower in tech, but the science is most certainly well beating, just like anyone else. And we benefited from that very early on by taking part in a number of FP7 European grants, where we built a network of scientists across Europe which really helps us develop our programs. And that was something that we're very grateful for. German government also, through the Science and Technology Ministry, the BMBF, also provided grants to us, which we benefited from. And during the pandemic itself, the EIB were very graciously provided funding for us. And most recently, we've received up to 375 million from the BMBF, where there's a special program to drive COVID-19 vaccine program rapidly in Europe, and we're very, very, very grateful for all of this support. Of course, it's not. It would be remiss of me to say it's only public money. We've raised over $2 billion in private money over the years, and that certainly contributed to where we are today. So, probably the last slide, and I'm sure this will cause a lot of discussion, what might be considered by policymakers to drive further innovation, and what we've learned from the COVID experience is you do see it around the world, and we've seen it in dealing with multiple governments as we talk to them about supply agreements, that there isn't a large amount of financing available as everyone tries to position themselves as the tech center, whether that's an individual state in the United States or government itself, such as centralized funding. BARDA is something that the federal government in the United States provide, which was very rapidly accessed by a number of companies, which is a central funding body for pandemics such as this one. In Europe, we don't have that yet. We're still reliant on our individual states to support us, and that might be something that we may want to consider at the European level. IT infrastructure, I've put down here, is important. We learned that very early on. What we do nowadays is a lot of digitalized work. We work at the molecular level. And just to give you an example, when we started with our vaccines for cancer in 2013, the individualized ones, what we do is we compare a patient's tumor to their normal cells at a genomic level. But for that, you need a tremendous amount of computing power. And back in 2013, the only place we found it was in the University of Mainz, who had the biggest computing power in Europe, one of the biggest computing capabilities in Europe. So that we used to send our genetic data over for analysis there. That shouldn't be the case. We should be able to do that in companies, and I think this may certainly improve, but there's definitely something that would be very helpful. And when you're dealing with identifying antigens at the molecular level against a virus, again, you need a certain amount of computing power, so that's important. And finally, it's important that we channel risk-taking in the right way, which, as all Europeans, I think we've had thousands of years of dealing with risk, and we've developed a certain culture. It's not necessarily the most powerful, doesn't matter which country you look at, for driving innovation. And therefore, I don't really know what the solution is. We took ours. Our learning was we took a US model of growth, which was very aggressive, and applied it within Europe, and got tremendous traction in Europe. And I think we need to encourage more risk-taking, because clearly that was quite a risky strategy relative to what we've seen in Europe. I think that's the end of my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for this very good presentation to give an overview of what you have been able to achieve in the last month. So congratulations for all the work that has been done. I would start with maybe questions, and I would really, again, ask people to ask their questions through the Q&A tool that they can find. I have a first question maybe for you, Sean, from Mr. Dirk Rain. We know Mr. Dirk Rain. He has been a participant to the Biotech Week over several years. Thank you, Dirk, for asking a question. He had a very specific question on the challenges related to deep frozen products that you must have been facing. And he would like to have your views on that one.
Yeah. So we just to explain on that, our mRNA vaccine needs to be stored at minus 70 degrees, so really deep freeze. We've developed actually an approach where we are able to supply in thermal boxes, which can be refreshed with dry ice for up to 15 days. And in addition to that, we do have the vaccine is stable for a further 5 days in the fridge. There's no question that leads to a different distribution strategy than the typical vaccines where you may put them in a fridge and keep them there for a few weeks before you need to use them. Our approach has been one at the beginning of mass vaccination. So we've used multi-dose vials. We're talking to governments about really vaccinating through very high throughput as quickly as possible, because the aim is really to break the pandemic, and to do that you need to give protection, and to do that you need to focus on the at-risk population, which is really the frontline workers in the healthcare system, and of course the elderly the over 55. Let's put it like that. I wouldn't say they're elderly because I'm 55, so I'm class myself as still young, but my immune system isn't as good as it used to be. And the goal is to get back to life as quickly as possible, and most important thing is efficacy with an appropriate side effect profile, and that's what we're looking for through mass vaccination. Would be how we would consider this. Over time, as we reduce the need for vaccinating those at-risk populations because we've vaccinated them, so we will go to more regular approach. And it's fair to say that we're working on approaches to let's say, make the vaccine more in line with what you typically do with flu. Because one thing that I do think we do believe is that COVID will stay with us, and it's not going to go away. And consequently, what we're measuring at the moment is, and what will take time to measure is how long will we be protected. And it's quite possible that we may have to have an annual shot or a refresher shot every couple of years in order to keep our immune system at the top of its game. And that gives us, part of the 12-year cycle that I was explaining earlier, normally allows you to come out of the gate with everything that everyone wishes for in terms of stability of the product in room temperature and at fridge temperature. We just haven't had time to do that at the moment. And likewise, we haven't had time to study long-term how long we will have protection. But all of this will come over time, should we be successful at getting our product approved.
Thank you very much, Sean. I have a second question from Mr. Rain, but the question will be also placed to Pilar. If extra funding would be centralized, and the discussion about funding and Horizon 2020 are in the center of the discussion currently, should it be focused more on research or more manufacturing to create local strongholds? What should be the balance? So Sean, obviously you're on both sides of the research and the manufacturing. Maybe you can start on that one, and then I will move on with Pilar to see what's her view on that one.
Sorry, Ben, I didn't hear the question. I had a thing on the line just there. Sorry, apologies.
So I'm just going to repeat it. It's regarding the extra funding, and especially in the COVID-19 context. If it's centralized, should it be focused more on the research side, or should it be more on the manufacturing side to create, the local strongholds in the countries in Europe? What should be the balance in your view? Should we, prioritize research, or should we prioritize manufacturing when it comes to extra funding?
For me, it's research, because the manufacturing comes after the research. Nowadays, with ever-increasing personalization of medicine and ever-increasing digitalization of our medicines in the way that we develop them, that's where we need to start first, with all sorts of work in not only in wet lab, but also in silico. There's tremendous strides being made in artificial intelligence in terms of algorithms that automatically determine characteristics of a particular protein or an approach. But then there clearly needs to be more work on that, because that all needs to be validated, and that's basic research. Thereafter will come the manufacturing. But I would suggest that, in this digitalized world, and medicine is probably, if you look, it's probably, because of the way we're regulated, probably the more conservative in the way that we're digitalizing, but it is coming. That there's much more work to do there, and I would suggest research first.
I'm just looking if I get some other questions moving. Yes, I think we have another question coming in.
I also have one again.
Yeah, go on, Pilar.
Good. It's a question to Sean, of course. Because I was following very attentively your explanation on the distribution. For what I see and what I heard, not only from you, but other players that are developing the vaccines, the best, so to speak, that we have today is, let me use this term, the best, that we are hoping to is vaccines that could be distributed at -18. That's the best scenario for the time being, and you mentioned -70 indeed. The question is, it's a question, because I have two hats. So I'm not only dealing with innovation on products, but I'm also responsible for research on health systems. And hence my question. Now, obviously, if you look at this from the perspective of the health systems, distribution, as you mentioned, distribution of a vaccine that has to be kept at -70, but also then has to be used within a week, let's simplify, that would also put a tremendous strain on the health systems themselves. It's not only about the products. I'm thinking now about the innovation in the system. And that would be complex in Europe, but I think that you can imagine that beyond Europe, in other areas of the world, that would be simply impossible and manageable. So, and we also know that we need to have this pandemic fought at the global level. Any reflections on that? I will be curious to hear from your perspective and your background and your experience. Any reflections that you can share with us from that part?
Yeah, a couple of things.
So the question is,
first of all, we shouldn't. If we take Europe first of all, and then we go to the go to some of the Gavi countries, so the developing countries. In Europe, it's possible to, according to the classic couriers, to cover 90% of the population in terms of delivery anywhere in Europe within 1 day using at -70. So in terms of transport, it's not an issue. In terms of use, you're of course right that this is going to require some quite strong organization, and it is something that we of course are very much supporting, because I think the aim is really to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. And if that is the aim, then again, I don't see a significant challenge other than, as you quite rightly imply, we need to be organized, and that may take away from, if you're being vaccinated through a throughput, then that may take away from other services that are typically provided. I can't really comment on that, but I would say that there is a lot of flexibility. If you can store our vaccine at -70 for 6 months. So if you have a -70 capability, you can keep it for 6 months. If you don't, as I say, the actual shipper boxes, you can use that as a -70 fridge for up to 15 days if you renew the dry ice. So that gives you 15 days, and then you've got another 5 days to use it. So our assumption is within that time, people will want to be vaccinated, because once you're vaccinated, of course, based on the efficacy data that we hope to be able to demonstrate, you should be protected. And then you don't have the fear of, can I go out, particularly if you're elderly. My parents, they don't go to the shops because my father has COPD. It'll kill him if he gets COVID-19. It will kill him. So, if he's vaccinated with something that protects him, that's a whole different life for him. And that is, I guess, a real interest to society to be vaccinated. Now, in terms of what we're doing, I mentioned that we brought this pretty much from the end of January into testing now 44,000 people, of which we've dosed actually over 30,000 now, within 6 months or so. In parallel to that, we have been looking at ways to extend the stability of this program in the fridge at -2 to 8, or we're also looking at -20 to your point there. We're also looking, and I mentioned that we have a number of candidates in clinical testing. We're also looking at freeze-dried formulation. We provide this in liquid at the moment, and have a program that we have that we're working on to do that. All of that is going to take, with the freeze-dried approach, a little bit of time. With the stability of the fridge and -20, we're going to get all of this in real time because it's all happening as we develop the product. And this is what's been unusual about this program. I was mentioning, normally you typically see vaccines over a 12-year cycle, and part of the reason for that is because you are optimizing a number of parameters. We're having to do everything in real time because of the urgency of the pandemic, and trying to get a vaccine there that is useful to protect people. But there's no question that governments and healthcare providers will need to be organized to, if they want to do mass vaccination, don't have to, but if they want to do that. Our experience with governments is they're really, really engaged. They really are. It's amazing. I've never seen such a level of cooperation between ourselves. Maybe it's because we're a young company, but it's really a fantastic partnership we have with the government to see how we can really implement this in a meaningful way. Should we get the vaccine approved? For the developing countries, I think we're looking at alternative formulations. I mentioned a few of those. Even with the developing countries, though, in discussions with the Gates Foundation, for some of them there may be a way of providing even our existing formulation that we have. So I think it's all developing in real time. So I can't give you definitive answers, but I can say that clearly this is an area where we are focusing on. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that efficacy, because if you can get protection, I think the challenges of -70, and we have had -70 distribution before for vaccines, is probably less important than having a really efficacious vaccine that can break this pandemic.
Thank you, Sean. I hope, Pilar, you're happy with this lengthy answer that you got to your questions.
Yes,
yes, indeed, I'm very happy. No, I'm very happy, but it's just, for me, it's once you start reflecting on all the elements, it's, the issue becomes very complex. And as I have mentioned, the European Commission has been very active on the global dimension, has been leading part of the global dimension. We're now part of COVAX. So when you interact in this global dimension, you realize how complex the landscape is. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. There's no question. It's complex.
At Europa Bio, we are part of this health innovation initiative, and we are really looking for a flexible, resilient, and what we call a globally connected R&D and innovation ecosystem that helps to translate science into health solutions with very positive impact for the citizens. And after the COVID-19 situation, do you think that the health topics will be prioritized differently? You've seen some discussion on some other budgets going on there. What do you think is going to happen there?
That is a question for Mr.
I just wanted to inform you that Mr. Lise has now, definitively not been able to join. He's apologizing, and he's now entering, in an ENVI committee that he has to prepare. So we will certainly find an occasion to interact with him, because we had obviously many questions to him on, the consequences of COVID-19 on public health and what politicians could do in this regard. Pilar, I know that, I don't want to put you on the spot, but, Mr. von der Leyen has announced, a few elements last week. One is the potential creation of a BARDA, and I know that you cannot too much speak to it. Also, strengthening the role of the ECDC, and also looking at the role of the EMA in the future. On the BARDA, one suggestion, and I just wanted to have your views, because you know that we have worked with the Commission and your departments on trying to connect the small biotech companies in the COVID-19 crisis. And I want to take the occasion here to thank, the National Association that has helped us to connect our, smaller affiliates to the Commission. I think, in the light of, because there will be reflection on that one in the future, I think at Europa Bio we would be extremely interested, to work with you on looking at, there are larger companies that have, the connection and international possibilities to network. But, in the creation of the BARDA, because I think we have connected, I think, with your department, something like 30 biotech companies. And honestly, when we started, they were not on our radar screen. We discovered a lot. I think there are some learnings about, what can be done better on that regard. And maybe in that reflection, we could certainly participate to some work on that one. I don't know. So we're coming to the end of this session. And I think for the sake of time, we're going to close. I had a few other questions to both of you, but I'm sure we can certainly, with Mr. Peter Lise, have some other conversation in the future on that topic. I wanted to thank you both, Sean and Pilar, for participating and being flexible given the circumstances to the discussion. Thank you very much. And thank you also to BioDeutschland to having helped us organize this meeting. We're going to close the meeting now, and we will be happy to continue with you the conversation either on the social networks or more personally in the future. But thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I have put there on the chat, as you can see, the two links where information on the projects and on the other activities can be found. So please, and now I'm speaking to all the attendees, reach out to Europa Bio if this information is not what you were looking for, and we'll be happy to distribute through them these links. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with this, we are closing the session, this breakfast session, and thank you for participating to all the participants.